Thank you and welcome. So I'm Kirsten Roberts. I head up Frith's Waste and Sustainability team, and this webinar is part of our sort of short, sharp series for the hospitality sector on sustainability issues, this one dealing with waste. There aren't that many of you on today, so if you feel comfortable, please do put your camera on and we could turn it into more of a chat and workshop it. But if you don't feel comfortable, that's absolutely fine as well. So as I said, this is part of a series of webinars. Next slide, please. So last week, my colleague Shreya Thapa and I led with a sort of overview of ESG and the hospitality sector. We've got a good one coming up with my colleague Iona Silverman on greenwashing, including all the up-to-date cases on greenwashing. Greenwashing now, if you get it wrong, is something that I just realized I haven't started my stopwatch, so I don't want to go over. Greenwashing used to be a code of practice, but now actually it's got fines attached to it. So if you get it wrong, you might get fined, but actually probably a lot worse than that is it could damage your brand. So I do encourage you to join that one. And then in September, because we give you a summer break, we have clean energy procurement, talking about what you can be doing to assist your journey to net zero with clean energy. Excuse me. I also want to plug, sorry, I've got a gremlin. On our website, if you Google Friths and ESG, you will find other documents and products that might help you, including our 6-monthly Sustainability Horizon Scanner to give you a good look ahead to what's coming down the chain. Next slide, please. So this one's about waste. And because I'm a bit of a legal anorak, I actually read a summary of Trump's Big Beautiful Bill, is that what it's called? Where he has basically stripped all the money out of anything to do with sustainability. So you might sort of think, well, do I even need to worry about my ESG plan, etc., and the role that waste plays in it? I would suggest yes, because he won't be there forever. But also sustainability, and as a large part of that, reduction of waste and reduction of the virgin resources we take out of our planet is definitely the direction of travel in the EU and Europe. So, you know, having said that, you may have heard, if you're on top of these things, that there were to be some huge pieces of EU legislation to do with sustainability reporting, and other legislation to do with virgin materials that get used in the creation of products, whether those are batteries, etc., etc. And a lot of those have been delayed in Europe, but they're delayed so that there can be a consultation and an evaluation of the breadth of those data gathering obligations and the size of companies to which they apply. They are not going away. And then in the UK, we have the Environment Act 2021, and a lot of the legislation I'm going to talk about today is as a result of that act. And I also wanted to mention, because it's a direction of travel thing, that our current government has a circular economy task force looking at, again, this idea, and this is how it relates to waste. How can we prevent waste arising in the first place? And to the extent that something is going to get used using virgin materials, natural resources, how can we extend its life as long as possible, make sure it's capable of repair, and then to the extent it can't be reused as it is, recycled, etc., etc. So the direction of travel I would suggest to you is definitely the kind of thing that I'm going to be talking about today, which is preaching to the converted. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on a webinar like this morning. Next slide, please. I also wanted to tell you that waste is devolved. Now, I know that's the Irish flag because I wasn't sure which was the flag for Northern Ireland, and I was a bit nervous about that. So some of the legislation I'm going to tell you about today is English focused, but it will be, all the legislation is coming in relation to all 4 of the devolved nations. But sometimes there are tweaks, which means it's a bit different. So if you're operating a business that crosses lines into Wales or into Scotland from England or into Northern Ireland, then you're going to have to just check the local laws to see what the local laws are. By way of example, one of the things I'm going to be talking about today is simpler recycling. And a version of that has been in Scotland for a couple of years, whereas it's only come into this I say this, I'm sitting in England today. It only arrived in England in March. So waste is devolved. Next slide, please. So waste should be part of your ESG policy, however you decide to call that. At Freeth, we call it responsible business. And why do I say that? Waste is the unsexy part of sustainability, because if you can reduce waste, that will really assist you on your net zero journey. And also it's a good news story when you're doing your sustainability reports, as a lot of companies do, either in a formal way, like Freeth does a responsible business report every year, or it can just be updating your website to tell your customers what you're doing. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm missing my waste hierarchy there. Next slide, please, actually. We'll go on to there it is. So I keep talking about preventing waste, and I really want to emphasize this today because the waste hierarchy is the right thing to do, but it's also where a lot of the legislation that I'm going to talk to you about today is coming from. People keep talking about recycling, but those of us who are waste anoraks know that recycling, as you can see in this inverted triangle, is halfway down the inverted triangle. And what we all should be trying to do is prevent the waste occurring in the first place. To the extent that you can't completely prevent it, let's see if you can reduce it. And then if you have, whether it's chairs in the bedrooms or in the bars, if you've stopped using them, can they be reused in the same way? And only then do you start thinking about recycling. And this is the way that we're going to achieve our net zero goals, travel on our sustainability journey. Next slide, please, actually, because I've got one for the food waste hierarchy. So a lot of you, if not all of you, will be dealing in food and drink, and there's a separate waste food hierarchy. And this is one of those areas where I really want to sell to you the idea that this is an opportunity, because actually every time you reduce your waste, then you're reducing your costs. So if you can measure what food you're throwing away on a regular basis, you can stop buying quite as much of it in the first place, because clearly the consumers don't need it all. And if you were at the webinar last Monday, you'll have heard me say that there are examples, like there's a food hub in London which puts less food on the plate but gives their consumers, a guarantee that if they're still hungry, once they finish their plate and bring a clean plate back, then they can have seconds, essentially, like our mums and dads would have done to us at home. Finish what's on your plate and then you can have some more, rather than this idea that, well, we'll pile it up with chips or carrots or whatever it is, and then loads of it will get thrown away. So as I say, this is an opportunity for you. Next slide, please. And tied in with that, there's an organisation called WRAP. So if you're wondering how to go about this, Google WRAP, and actually when the slides get sent out, there is a link there on the slide to WRAP. WRAP is a semi-governmental body which works to reduce waste, and it's doing a lot around food waste. Really worthwhile having a look at their ideas. The bit there that says get started on your first food waste reduction journey is a direct email to them where you can ask for assistance, and all of this is free. So what WRAP is saying, Target Measure Act, what they're saying is if you set out a very specific food waste reduction target and then measure your journey on it, you will be saving yourself a lot of money. So I've got some stats here. Food waste costs the UK hospitality and food service sector 3.2 billion each year. And if you can understand how much, where and why food loss and waste is occurring, you can measure and act upon it. And this is all from the WRAP website. I mean, they've got loads of useful tools and amazing specialists there that could help you work out how best to use your energy to reduce food waste and thereby save costs. And you can shout about it on your websites to your consumers. Research from 1,200 business sites from across 700 companies in 17 countries found that the median company saved over £10 for every pound they invested on curbing food loss and waste. So see, there are some massive opportunities there in terms of cost reduction for you. And as I say, WRAP is a brilliant organisation with lots of useful tools that you might be able to use. Next slide, please. And again, this is just banging on about the waste food hierarchy, which isn't new. It's been around since 1975. And it's, as I mentioned, it's the basis on which all the EU and UK legislation is pinned. And it is about this idea of reduce and reuse before you jump into recycling. I was sort of scratching my head about how in the hospitality sector you can reuse things. It's more difficult. Because I suppose things are often quite worn out. But there may be people who want to buy what you can no longer use to be used again. And I suppose you'd be amazed. So in a completely different industry, I've got a contact who manages the waste for the MOD, and they sell their jet fighter pilot seats to the gamers for loads of money. So you might be surprised what you're throwing away, the amount of value it might have for somebody else. So it's worth looking into before you contact your waste management company to take these things away, which they will charge you for. And also, if it can't be sold, so realise, another income stream for your business. If it truly can't be sold, then, every time at Freece we do an office refit, we manage to give everything away to local charities, which again is something you can shout about on your website in the sustainability sectors. Meeting consumer demand. Well, it's what the consumers say they want, isn't it? Next slide, please. So jumping into the legislation, the first bunch of legislation I'm going to talk about is stuff that's already in, and I would hope that you're all aware of, but one should never assume. So single-use plastic straws, you can get fined if you're using these, but there is an exemption. Should I be telling you about the exemption? So if you are supplying plastic straws together with food or drink for immediate consumption on premises, that's an exemption, provided the consumers can't see the straws or access them themselves. They've got to ask for them, so don't have them on the bar. They've got to ask for them, but if they do ask for them, then you can give them out. And I suppose the reason I mention this, and I'm a lawyer, I'm not into the technical side of a carbon footprint, but quite often you see the paper straws are there available instead of the plastic straws. And I wonder how much those premises have done, how much evaluation they've done into what's the carbon footprint of a plastic straw versus a paper straw, because both are single use and using valuable resources from the planet. So, ideally people could, just drink from a glass like a grown-up in my humble opinion. But yeah, so there is an exemption to the single plastic straws, but don't let the consumer see them. They've got to ask. Next slide, please. Similarly, single-use cutlery. Again, I see, in our cafe downstairs here at Freece Birmingham, they swapped out all the single-use cutlery and put in wooden cutlery instead. And again, I just wonder what the carbon footprint difference is, because again, it's single-use. Nobody's taking that wooden cutlery home, giving it a good wash and using it again, or hardly anybody. I mentioned at the beginning that waste is devolved, which means you get slightly different laws in the 4 different nations. So in England, it's an offence to supply or offer single-use plastic cutlery, whereas in Scotland, it's also an offence to have it in your possession to supply it. So if you've got stalls of this and you're in Scotland and you're wondering what to do with it, watch out, because technically that's a crime in itself. And Wales has got similar laws to England. Don't supply it. But as I say, if it's, a lot of you will be operating in venues where it's metal cutlery that gets washed again. But if you've got a venue where you are having to give away some single-use cutlery, you're absolutely not allowed to use the plastic stuff. But please consider what the different carbon footprints between offering wooden alternatives or offering people to come back and wash it. Wonder what the best thing is for the planet. Next slide, please. This one's more recent. And again, I was just thinking that a lot of you might be operating bars where you might have been selling single-use vapes. Just be aware that since the beginning of last month, it's illegal to offer single-use vapes. Next slide, please. Again, a law that's already in, but just to make sure that you're aware of it, is plastic packaging tax. So the next series of pieces of legislation I'm going to tell you about are layer upon layer of costs for your business. Because what the government doesn't do is say, oh, well, you're already paying under plastic packaging tax, therefore we're not going to charge you under extended producer responsibility for packaging. Actually, you know, as you just pay a number of times to different organisations. So the plastic packaging tax has been in a while. This is only going to be relevant to UK businesses that manufacture or import 10 tonnes or more of plastic packaging within a 12-month period. But some of you are operating or part of operating UK-wide hotel chains, and therefore you might be hitting that 10 tonnes. So if you are having manufactured for you because you want to put your own brand on it, or importing plastic packaging over 10 tonnes a year, then you're going to get charged the tax unless all of that plastic packaging has over a 30% recycled content. So this links into something I mentioned last week, where you have to work with your suppliers quite often in your supply chain in order to comply with your sustainability obligations. And this is one area. So if you are importing, you know, and I've given these little toiletries bottles as an example on the slide. If you're importing these things, or if you're the first importer of them, you're going to get charged the tax unless you can prove that they've got over that 30% recycled content, which a lot of businesses in the UK are finding it really hard to get that data. And you don't just have to get it once, you have to get it every year. And as it's mentioned there, the plastic packaging tax is going up every year. HMRC think this is a brilliant idea. I mean, I'm given to understand that when this was introduced, it was, we need a new tax, we need a new income stream. What do consumers not like? They don't like plastic. You know, 2 and 2 makes 4. So currently the rate is £223.69 a tonne, but it, as I say, it's gone up quite a bit already. Next slide, please. So plastic packaging tax has been in for quite a few years, and I would hope that if you're impacted by that, that you're all over it. Simpler Recycling came in March of this year and affects all businesses, including the hospitality sector. So the purpose behind Simpler Recycling reforms is to make it easier for consumers to know what to recycle and where. The main thrust of this legislation is that you can no longer, and I'm sure most of you wouldn't anyway, throw everything in the black bin outside. So there are certain waste streams, as they're called, which include glass, paper and cardboard, aluminium tins, and plastics, of course, which have to be collected separately in the same way that you might do at home. Now, there is an exemption that you can collect the waste streams, or offer them for collection by your waste management companies, I should say, together, but only then if you can show that it's technically not practicable to offer them separately, and you are never allowed to mix food waste in. So you absolutely must be having your food waste collected separately. And the reason for that is that food waste contaminates all the other recyclates and makes it a lot harder for them to be recycled. Next slide, please. I should mention, in relation to the Simpler Recycling there, that's in since March, unless you're a micro firm. So if you're a business that has fewer than 10 full-time employees, then this Simpler Recycling obligation to present your waste segregated for collection won't come in until March 2027. But that's not 10 employees per venue or per premises, that's nationally. So for micro firms, you get a couple more years to sort your life out, but for everybody else, it came in last March. Deposit return scheme. So the deposit return scheme is mainly, so again, the idea behind it is this idea of let's reduce the amount of waste created in the first place. Let's make the people who create waste that ends up littering our streets, etc., etc., think about how they can reduce it. But it is going to impact the hospitality industry as well. So it's coming in October 27, although the major retailers are trying to campaign for that to be delayed. It's to do with drinks containers. So importantly, it's not glass, but it's any other drinks container. So it'll principally be plastic bottles and Coke cans, etc., within the size, as it says there, of 150 mils to 3 litres. Now, if you're the likes of Tesco's, you have to be not only two things, charging a 20p deposit on every drink that you sell, but also offering a place where consumers can come back, return their drinks containers and claim their 20p's back, either in cash or a credit or something like that. So hospitality venues are not required to host return points, but you may be obliged to charge the 20p deposit on any drinks that are going to be taken off site. So this is one to keep an eye on. Again, as I mentioned, waste is devolved. So I'm currently talking about this legislation as it affects England and Scotland and Northern Ireland. Wales are going to do a different scheme because Wales want to focus less on the recycling element that deposit return scheme will lead to and more on a refill scheme. So they're still trying to work out what the rules of their scheme will be. So that's a sort of watch this space. In relation to drinks that you sell, which are for immediate consumption on premises, you don't have to worry about this. This is just where perhaps you're selling drinks that are going to be taken away. I guess if people can pop in and buy a bottle of Coke with the lid still on so they can go and take it on a picnic because they're going on a walk nearby, that kind of situation is when you're going to have to worry about it. Or if it's a cafe which allows consumers to buy drinks to take them away, and then you're going to have to charge this deposit. But as I say, you won't be obliged to run a return point where they can bring things back. You will, of course, because it links into simpler recycling, have to take back the drinks, the bottles, the cans that are consumed on premises and put it into your now segregated waste recycling area. Next slide, please. Then next, I said it's layer upon layer of costs. You've got your plastic packaging tax. You may have to spend money in order to comply with the deposit return scheme. And then we have what's called extended producer responsibility for packaging. So again, this is an idea that if you're having packaging manufactured for you in the UK, this is particularly relevant to brands, or if you're importing packaging, then as well as paying under the plastic packaging tax, which only relates to plastic, any packaging might be subject to this, and it might be an additional cost. Now, there are some hurdles that you'd have to jump before this affects you, as set out on the slide. So it's, do you have a turnover of 1 million or more? And were you responsible for importing or supplying more than 25 tonnes of packaging in the previous calendar year? But if you tick those boxes and are supplying packaging to your consumers, whether it's the individual plastic toiletries, bottles in the bathrooms, etc., or any other packaging that you happen to be giving your consumers who are on your premises, then you're going to be subject to this additional cost. Now, we're not entirely sure how this is going to relate to the hospitality industry because that part is still under negotiation. Next slide, please. And the reason it's still under negotiation is because UK Hospitality has been saying that this is going to be an unfair additional cost for hospitality venues because you're already paying for your waste to be collected and taken away by the waste management companies. So why should you also have to pay a fee under the extended producer responsibility for packaging rules? And the reason for that is that the purpose behind this legislation is that it's catching the kind of packaging that ends up in homes being collected by local authorities, and at the moment it was the local authorities having to pay the cost of taking it away. Well, if you're already paying the cost of this being taken away, why are you having to pay twice? So the proposed solution by UK Hospitality is that Direct supply of packaging to hospitality businesses and hospitality wholesalers, including pubs, is exempt. And where a premises sells packaged products for consumption off and on premises, there needs to be a mechanism, products for consumption off premises needs to be a mechanism that allows EPR to be paid only on the volume taken off premises, but that is still under consultation. So again, it's a watch this space. Next slide, please. So that's a quick canter through quite a lot of waste legislation. As I mentioned, the reason, if you're trying to work out what the heck they're all getting at, is to try and reduce the amount of waste put into the UK marketplace in the first place. So things like extended producer responsibility for packaging and plastic packaging tax has already led to, well, I noticed on my shampoo, won't name the brand, but they've reduced the lid from that big to that big. So it's just trying to reduce the amount of natural resources we're using in the first place, as well as the amount of waste that has to be collected. And then the other thing to take away is it's layer upon layer of cost for you unless you can, using more sustainable practices like reducing waste in the first place, talking to your suppliers to reduce waste where you can influence that kind of change. But this can lead to an opportunity. Have a look at the RAP guidelines to do with food waste, because to the extent that you can work out what you're wasting, then you can work to reduce it. You can measure, so you have to measure it, then come up with a smart target. And as well as saving money, all of that is something that you can shout about to your consumers and, improve your brand in that way. So that's and I've said here collaboration with your supply chain. As I mentioned, one of the obvious ways you're going to have to collaborate with your supply chain is in relation to plastic packaging tax, if you're affected by that, because you're going to need that data from your suppliers about the recycled content of the plastic that you are putting onto the UK market. But other ways to collaborate with your supply chain is, if it's a chair or a desk or a towel, if these things can be made to last longer, then the waste will happen a lot further down the chain. I don't know if anybody's got, we literally got a couple of minutes, but if anybody's brave and wants to ask any questions, please do so. I don't have any in the chat already. And if not, I can let you all get back to your day, but to say we will follow up with the slides. There's a link to the RAP website, which will help you with the food waste question. And my number's on the slide there. If you want to give me a specific ring about any specific concerns you have for your business, please do. But I suppose the big message is, although, as I say, I'm preaching to the converted because you've attended this morning, this isn't going away, despite Trump's best efforts. Sustainability is the direction of travel. Okay. I hope you all have a great day, and we will circulate the slides and the recording.